and all that stuff all the time. So I'm tired of that, all that FUD and all this speculation. And what I want to do is I want to build products that work and are efficient. Just like how many people write scripts or something that work? How many people do that? And so anything that you can write one time, you can do it one time manually. You probably can write a script and or at some level create some kind of product at the end of the day. When you look at a lot of security products, they're nothing but a lot of scripts together, right? And kind of do that kind of stuff all the time. It's not important on how these particular tools work, and I'm going to show a bunch of security tools, right? And I'm going to tell you like how they work, why it was built, and then you'll recognize these names because they're pretty popular and they're making a lot of money now. But if you start with why, you'll see like why were they made? Nessus. How many people in here used Nessus before? How many people think they could write Nessus themselves if you had to? Yeah. Like, how does it work? How does Nessus work at fundamental level? Huh? Version checking, banner grabbing, things of that nature, TCP fingerprinting. At a low level, a lot of people in here could probably write something like that. Even if we said, I want to do 5 checks or something, I want to go out and grab a banner check, write it in Python or something, right? You could probably write that, right? But the why, the start with why was, why did they do it? They did it, it was kind of more of a hacker tool, right? They wanted to see if something was exploitable. It ended up evolving into this beast that actually could check. It's used for security. It's used for the good guys now, right? It's used for vulnerability management now. But the why, the person that wrote it had a real reason and wanted to automate something real. What we see with a lot of products is that they make up some tangential thing or what they're trying to solve based on the latest Washington Times or whatever, and then they go up and build a product and they market it. And that's why the products suck. Because their core, always look at a product's core. And if you want to create something, does it solve some kind of core need first? And that's what Nessus did. How many people used this before? Do you think you could write tripwire yourself? Could you? Or how would you do that? How would I do it? How would you do it? Anybody got any? How would you do that?
You write a script to assess a baseline, and then you run another script later.
You can do a recursive. That's right. You can do a recursive. MD5 summary of any directory, and then do another one, and then compare the results. Right? That's tripwire, right? They're making a lot of money. So, but the basis that they wrote it, the basis at the beginning was pretty awesome. It was useful and it solved a problem, right? It was checking file integrity by MD5 summaries. 92 SHA-1, they got this whole suite built around that. It's a whole wrapper around it. Anybody use this? All right? How would you build Snort? Anybody? How would you build Snort today?
Live PCAP and just look at the TCP and UDP streams for patterns with regex.
Yep. Now Snort is a lot more complicated than that now, but from a baseline perspective, if you wanted to create something like Snort, you could do something like that. It solved a real problem, and now they're successful and prospering. A lot more stuff is a lot better than that. It's more than scripting now. It's like stuff hard coded in C and all that stuff. But you get the point. It solves a real problem. That's why the product's successful. Metasploit. Could you write your own Metasploit?
It's just a bunch of Ruby scripts.
He says there's a bunch of Ruby scripts. You could probably write something similar to Metasploit, right? But what happens is we see a lot of products being made, and then after you see what they do, they're like, oh, that's easy to do, right? And that's the difference is people have taken these products and have made them into businesses and generated income off of them. Because a lot of us probably create tools like this. When I was back at NSA, I wrote pro scripts that did a lot of log correlation. Then a couple of years later, there was this thing called a sim that came out, you know, and it was the first sims pretty much did exactly what I was doing, but now they've become advanced and stuff. And how many times have a lot of people in here probably thought of something or implemented something or scripted something, and then the product comes out and does the same thing. That happens a lot. That's because they can build a business around it. A really cool example about that, how many people use Armitage? So, anybody know Raphael Mudge? Yeah, that's my buddy. Raphael, he created a wrapper around Metasploit, and now he has a successful lifestyle business. He does this company, and that's all he does. He built this tool called Cobalt Strike, and that's all he does now. That's his company. It's considered a lifestyle business. He sells enough product, and that's all he does. You can do that, or you can do it the other way. If you have a really, really good idea, sometimes that you might need to raise capital fast, and I'll talk about that later, to actually get it to the masses. Or you can be like Raphael, where I don't care about like going up and being some kind of millionaire or nothing like that. And you have some high valuation. You can just have a really good lifestyle business. So I got Rapid7. I used to work for Rapid7 for a while, and I worked closely with HD Moore. And we know that Metasploit got acquired by Rapid7 back in the day. And so I go to a lot of hacker conferences. Like I said, I've had my own hacker conference before. I managed meetups and stuff on the hacker scene for a while, and I know there's a lot of brilliant InfoSec people that write really good tools. But the difference between the average hacker and what HD did, he actually wrote a paper about this, a blog post. If you email me or something, I can actually get that to you. He actually set up Metasploit in the beginning as a business. He trademarked Metasploit. He put that in himself. He created LLC. He created all these different things, so at one point in the future, it was easily acquired by Rapid7. And he set that stuff up way before the acquisition. And so I think that even things like that, we could do a better job, because I know a lot of people create products. For instance, like there probably is at least one talk of somebody writing a tool, and I haven't looked at the agenda hardcore. But there's probably at least one talk here of somebody creating a tool and they release it open source, right? And every conference you go to, you see it. But they don't have that mindset to, I'm going to create a product and a business, and how that's something that can be scaled. Even if you just trademark your name, that's like $325, I believe. Even if you just do that, because I tell you right now, people are going to rip you off, because that's just the way our industry works. And you call it rip you off or borrow or be inspired. The bottom line is somebody's going to take your idea and they're going to get paid off of it, right? And some people are okay with that. So when I was at Rapid7, I created this thing called BSploit modules. Anybody ever heard of that term before? So I created this thing called BSploit modules, and that's me up there speaking at DEFCON. You see, my beard was kind of epic then, wasn't it? I was getting frisked at airports and stuff. They thought I was a terrorist or something, I guess. But yeah, my beard game was epic. I shaved it down a little bit. My wife thinks I look too young if I shave it all the way off, so I got to keep it on, keep a little bit of scruff hair. But I came up with this thing called BSploit modules at Rapid7, and I made Metasploit internally would act like it was a compromise, right? So the reason why I did this is because I worked, anybody heard of CMS in Baltimore? It's the Center for Medicaid Medicare Services. It's a big data center. Anybody seen Die Hard? The last Die Hard where the guy was hacking and everything. So CMS is the data center that was supposed to be. So it's a huge data center. It was a messy data center though. Cables all over the place. It was epic. It was crazy. It was like a rat's nest, the whole place. But it was a huge data center though. Redact that from the video. So at CMS, I was in charge. I was a senior security person, and they put me in charge of evaluating all new products before it came into that organization. So I would get all these products like DLP in. I did the largest deployment of air defense ever. I used to do crazy special projects, right? Y'all familiar with air defense and all that stuff? I deployed air defense on 5,000 laptops. That was a nightmare. Keeping those policies and all that stuff. That was a nightmare. Got it done. And from there, I started evaluating all kinds of different products, DLPs and all that stuff. And even the vendors themselves, they couldn't validate their product. Like, I come from the Navy, and the Navy was like really particular on certification and accreditation process. So every time they put a product in, they made sure it worked. But in the security world, people put stuff on networks all the time and don't have a clue if it works or not. I see it all the time. Anybody see that? And can I get an amen in the congregation? Amen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And some of these products are worth millions. And sometimes the products don't work. Like, well, the products are what we say, like false positives. Like the story about how the Target thing was that FireEye was kicking false positives. People stopped paying attention to it or whatever. And that was a result. They didn't respond quick enough, right? So it's because I believe in my heart that people aren't testing the products. They don't know how to use the products. They can't recognize a breach if it happened. They couldn't recognize a breach if it slapped them in the face, right? So that's why I started creating these things to simulate breaches. And the web beaconing thing, and on this example, was something I took malware or threat intel, and I did beaconing stuff, and I put it in the Metasploit back in the day. The problem was you had to put it on your network. So now that was in there. So over time, after I left Rapid7, I started reading and all this stuff, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I started reading all these different books and all that stuff. And so this is a classic example of building a small tool to do a small thing. So I started reading books like The Lean Startup. Anybody ever read this book before? Heard of it? So if you're thinking about starting a business, it's a really cool book. It kind of follows the scientific method a lot, as far as like forming a hypothesis and all that stuff, and then doing testing, and then turning around and then using that hypothesis, using the feedback of that test, and then being able to pivot, like as far as creating a product. It's scientific method. I've seen scientific method used all the time. They call it the lean startup method. I call it scientific method. And also, this is a book everybody should read. If you take one thing out of this talk, you got to check out this book. This book kind of like blew my mind as far as like how to work and how work should be. So if you're a manager or anything like that, or you're thinking about starting a business, check out this book as well. The most important thing about this book, it makes you think about how to create a product in a different sense. I talked about why those other products, those open source products, they were successful, people turned them into businesses and all that. And the reason why is because they all have one thing in common. They built what Rework calls, they call it the epicenter of a business or product. The epicenter of a product is just the one thing that makes that business a business, or product a product. So, for instance, like, what's the most important part of a hot dog stand? Can anybody tell me?
The hot dogs.
Person selling.
The hot dog. You can't have a hot dog stand without a hot dog, right? So that would be the epicenter of that cart. So all the other stuff, relish and all that stuff, that's secondary. It's not a hot dog stand. It's not that business, right? So when we think of security products, and I think a lot of vendors, why we're getting totally hosed on the vendor side, is because vendors want to add everything. They add all this stuff. So they take a hot dog stand and they do this to it. Right? That's not a hot dog stand. That's a work of art right there. So you got to have fundamental building blocks, and so this is why I actually encourage a lot of people to code. Sometimes I get into trouble a lot on Twitter. If you follow me, I'm at Marcus J. Carey on Twitter. Pick up my card, follow me on Twitter. I've heard I'm hilarious. So you got to have fundamental building blocks, and I encourage everybody in the security industry to at least pick up some kind of language. Here's kind of like my history. When I was at NSA, they trained me how to write C code. And then at night, I would write a lot of Perl code. Like I said, I wrote Sims in Perl. It was very ugly, but it worked. Right? Did I learn Python at some point? Any Python people in here? I hate Python. just totally kidding. I love Python, but I'm a Ruby guy. And Metasploit's written in Ruby, but whatever language you pick, it doesn't matter. Some people are getting into religious wars when it comes to programming languages. And what I've picked up lately, I've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years, is I've been doing a lot of Ruby's on Rails work. I love it. It's an excellent framework. There's Python frameworks too. So where products are going now, and I see at a lot of conferences, I see people writing command line scripts with all these arguments and all that stuff. And you remember Mama Brown? Like, ain't nobody got time for that. I don't got time to learn all your arguments. So I want to encourage hackers to start writing web interfaces. Write something so anybody can use it. Make it dead simple to use. And that's something we don't see. Anytime I see somebody come over with a tool, it's like, oh, I can't get your tool to work. Oh, well, you got to do the -T-M-ZZZ- blah, 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 and then it works. I'm like, oh, sweet. I should have did that the first time. So my first foray into writing a web application and trying to commercialize it was a website called Threat Agent. Anybody ever heard of this site? So a couple of people have heard of it. Thank you. So I built the site and I built this awesome OSINT tool. It was pretty awesome. You put in a company name, and you put in a domain, and I did mad OSINT stuff. Anybody use that and see the awesome capabilities that it displayed? So anyway, it totally worked. But the problem was I didn't have a business model behind it. So what I tried to do is hey, I'm going to charge $20 a month, and people or pen testers will buy it and all that stuff. The problem with this is this. And I got in trouble for saying this in Austin, right? I kind of gave this talk before. Hackers really don't want to pay for stuff, right? Quote unquote hackers, right? So I would encourage people to write. When you try to create a product or create some kind of tool, write it for an enterprise level. And you know what's interesting is that I've learned this recently, that as far as products go, people always like, oh, I'm going to build this and I'll get somebody to sell it, right? But a good salesperson, you have to sell like $100K per purchase to get a good salesperson. Because if you sell something under that, it's not worth it for their commissions. And salespeople, they're all about money. So if your product, you can't sell your product for like $100K, most people won't be interested in it. But there's a lot of crap products over $100K. So that's the good news. So, and this is where it gets interesting. So I did the Threat Agent site. I didn't make a lot of money. I did have some subscriptions. I didn't make a lot of money or anything off of it. So it was more like a sub-lifestyle business. It wasn't a lifestyle business. It was a little bit of money trickling in. I created this tool called Exfiltrate. And this tool was actually pretty cool, where I took the concepts that I was playing around with Metasploit and I made it all browser-based. And so I put it on the website. I didn't charge for it. I just let people use it. But the funniest thing happened. And this is where you talk about scientific, the scientific method and experimentation and lean startup process. I put it on there, had it on there for a year. I took it offline because I didn't have enough time to maintain all these tools. Took it offline, and I had people contacting me and saying, hey, where'd that tool go, right? And I was like, well, I took it offline and I have time enough to manage it. And so one dude called me up on the phone directly, hey, Marcus, where's that tool? I was making money off of it. I would go into an organization, I would run your tool, and I would sell DLP. And I was like, wow, this dude's getting paid off my stuff that I have for free. So this light bulb goes off, right? And that's happening to people all the time. And I'm not saying be some kind of crazy capitalist. I'm saying you're putting a lot of IP out there in the public domain, and somebody's going to take it. If it's not public that you can see it, I guarantee you that some of these big government contractors are definitely going to snatch it up and sell it to NSA. Your capabilities, all day. And so a good example is, this is funny because I'm like really kind of paranoid right now that people steal stuff, because they do steal stuff, right? So the first case of this happened, I created another web app called HoneyDocs. So this was actually quite popular. People are using this to track jihadis online. Have anybody heard of HoneyDocs? Yeah, so I created that as well. And people were tracking jihadis. They found all kind of use cases for this. They put it in jihadi forums. Jihadis were downloading these documents, and it would ping back and tell what the jihadis was. It's like, I mean, people were using my stuff for real intel stuff. And recently, like, this is crazy, right? And I didn't really have a business model for it, but it was awesome. And the funniest thing is this: I was talking to I wasn't talking to somebody. I sat in a talk from this world-class security organization, and they were talking about how they had this internal innovation program or something like that. And he said that, oh, the biggest innovation that we did internally was we created this beacon thing where you could put documents and you could track them and all this stuff. Honey ducks. I'm like, wow, dude. And then, like, that's what I'm saying. You're gonna put stuff out there. You're not gonna have a business plan. Somebody's gonna take it and run with it, whether it's internal usage, whether they sell it to a government customer, and it happens all the time. So why do you think all these contractors are at DEF CON or Black Hat or even here? They're going to pick up stuff. It's not evil or nothing, you know, but that's just the way the game works. If you put stuff out there, people are going to use it. And they're going to use it in ways that you would never understand. Like because we're all hackers, and sometimes you write a tool, you never know how somebody's going to use it. But it tripped me out when people were tracking jihadis with my stuff. I was like, wow, this is crazy. So up next, I decided that since I got all this awesome feedback, since I was making really cool products, that, I need to try to monetize this, and I need to actually create a business and all those things. So I went through a phase of, I'm not getting nothing for free now. So that was kind of how my mindset was. It's moderated a little bit. I'm going to give some stuff out for free still. You know, it's Christmas season, so I'm going to provide for my family and and all my security family out here. So interesting thing. So I came up with a new product that emulates network breaches, right? And forgive me if I sound a little bit like I'm pitching you. I'm not trying to pitch you, but I'm just trying to tell you how this whole situation worked for me, and hopefully get a couple of nuggets from it. So I created a product. Initially, I called it Fire Drill Me, is what I called it. Some people said that sounded like a porn site, though. And so, just a little bit. So,
just the tip.
So the company now it's called golly. So it went downhill quickly. Filthy minds and hackers, I tell you, you can't take them anywhere. So V30 is the company name now. And so when I first released the product and vision and stuff online, Mach 37 followed me on Twitter, and like I said, I'm on Twitter all the time. Follow me. People coming to me I haven't met before, and because I'm kind of known for ranting a little bit, I kind of get off, you know. But I'm reformed now. I'm a founder and a CEO now. I can't get gangster no more. You know what I'm saying? I can't do it no more. So Mach 37 followed me. I followed Mach 37 back, and then I was like, wow, it's a cybersecurity accelerator, because I was actually looking at other accelerators, thinking like, oh, they could help me out. But then I found Mach 37. They were focused on cybersecurity. So went around with them, and I eventually got a chance to pitch them my vision. And this is how you spell Mach 37. If you're interested in like perhaps starting a business or starting a product business, you can go to Mach37.com and check them out. So they said Mach 37, I followed them back, and then I started doing research because I'm a hacker. I get my OSINT on, you know, and so I'm like, let me find out who these guys are. And I found this picture of all these good-looking men right here. These attractive son of guns, aren't they? This guy's actually here. Joe Klein is pretty popular around here. He's been in a lot of hacker comps. You might know Joe. So Joe, I knew Joe, so I hit Joe up on the phone. I was like, Joe, what's up with Mach 37, dude? I see you all dressed up, and I've never seen Joe looking this good. I was like, man, I wonder if they could hook me up like that. You know what I'm saying? Because they make a brother look good. So I hit up Joe. Joe's like, yeah, man, it's legit, man. It's the real deal. Check it out, man. And so with Joe told me to check it out, and When I got there, it's like a mini Googleplex there. It's like it's small. It's not small, but it blew my mind. It totally blew my mind. And it's been all that Joe told me. So I'm a little bit plugged for Joe. Joe's company is Disrupt 6. He started it in Mach 37. And Joe is the IP version 6 security guru. Very brilliant dude. He's been dedicated to IP version 6 for a while. And he's actually going to help me port some of the stuff I do to IP version 6. So I'll look out for that. So here's a site that everybody should check out. So if you're interested in learning about accelerators and things of that nature, this is a website called F6S, and you can find out all about who's investing in stuff and like what accelerators are going, like how, and all that stuff. So that site is pretty awesome. So check it out, and just check it out because you may not want to raise money or get into some accelerator or product idea, but you may know somebody who does, you know. And sharing is caring, like Barney would say. I'm a Barney fan. So Barney kept all my kids quiet, so I love Barney. I got 4 kids, and they're all crazy just like me. So so this is hilarious though. I'm telling you how hackers work. And I love hackers. I'm a hacker. This is how we operate. So I follow Mach 37 on Twitter. Then Mach 37 was on F6S, so I follow him on there. And so I get this call out of the blue from one of my hacker buddies, JP Bourget. JP has this company called Security Networks. He calls me, he's like, hey man, are you in Mach 37? I was like, no, I'm not in Mach 37. He said, well, I see you follow him on Twitter and you just followed him on F6S. I was like, man, hackers are all over this stuff. I said, no, I'm not in. I'm not in yet, but if I get in, I'll let you know. Maybe I'll come in the spring. So ended up happening that Mach 37 gave me an opportunity to come up and pitch to him and get into this cohort session. So I came up and I pitched it, and I got in. But what was interesting about JP is JP said, "Oh man, I have an extra room for you to share." And this is what I love about the hacker community. I got an extra room for you. You know, you don't have to pay. Just give me money for food or whatever. And I was like, "Cool, dude, but I'm not in Mach 37. I'm not coming. No." So turns out I talked to Mach 37, and they told me I could pitch. And Joe said, "Hey man, just watch Shark Tank, man. It's just like Shark Tank." So Joe Krause, he's the man. That's my boy. He said, watch Shark Tank, man, and just whatever. So that dude got me addicted to Shark Tank. It's his fault, right? And so I came up and I pitched, and I tell you, man, if you ever watch Shark Tank, this right here, Kevin, man, this dude is an animal, right? So the guys, it was something that I went through it, and the pitch is supposed to take 8 minutes. But they tell me if they talk to you beyond that, if you ever talk to an angel or a VC person longer than that, they're probably interested in what you're doing. So it took forever, and I ended up getting into the program, right? And so, and for a little bit here, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you what a pitch kind of looks like, right? And this is not like I said, I'm not trying to pitch my product. I'm going to actually have a free version of the product I'll talk about in a little bit, and because I love my hacker community. But I'm going to show you how, and then we can end it, and hopefully if you have any questions, I can answer it and whatever. And also, I got plenty of cards. How I operate, if I meet you in person, and I'll follow you on Twitter, and I used to tell my students, I used to teach a lot of colleges, like if you cool with me, you're in my network for life. So that's how I roll. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit of, kind of like tell my story, tell the product, and I'm gonna show you how it kind of looks. And I don't know if I'm gonna go straight through. I'll stop and whatever, right? So let's do it. So when I worked at DC3, I worked with this guy named Johnny Long. Anybody heard of Johnny Long? So Johnny actually taught me how to be a hacker. Johnny kind of like as far as hacking goes. Johnny Network. It was a mock-up of an enterprise network. We had big racks. We had government money, so we just balling out of control. We put spinners on racks and everything, right? So we had all this stuff, total infrastructure, right? And so what we did is I was being blue team because that's my background mostly, and Johnny was the hacker. Johnny would act like Chinese hackers coming into the network and totally decimate the network. Johnny had contacts in the dark webs. He had Chinese malware, all this stuff, right? So Johnny would act like a Chinese hacker, but Johnny was a famous celebrity hacker. And if you can, visit the I Hack Charities booth, same way. Visit the Hacking for Charity a booth down there. So Johnny was always gone, doing shows, Black Hat, DEF CON, speaking it all over the world. And so they said, hey, we need somebody to, Johnny, we need for you to train your replacement kind of thing, because you're going all the time. Well, Johnny said, oh, I want to pick Marcus. So it was cool. Johnny picked me, and he taught me like all this hacking stuff. So it's funny because I was like Two-Face. Anybody seen everything? I call it Everything Is Awesome movie. Lego movie, where the like flip his face and be like being bad. That's kind of how it was. I'd be the hacker, and then I'd be the blue team, because if they wanted logs or something, oh yeah, I'd flip my face, boom. That's kind of how it worked. So that's what I did at DC Tour with Johnny. So what I found out there is that there's a lot of and stuff that looks like a breach. I always wanted to create a scenario that can like practice live exercises on their network. People don't have that opportunity. People do pen testing. Pen testing usually, unless you have an internal team, you probably do it once or twice a year, or some kind of audit or something, right? So here's the Miracle on the Hudson. Everybody remember this? Captain Sully, that dude's ball out of control, charging $50,000 to $100,000 per speech. So what you do is you train to be a pilot, crash land on the Hudson, and then you can go on a speaking concert tour, and you don't have to worry about startup, right? So anyway, what was interesting about this is this wasn't actually a miracle on the Hudson, because Captain Sully, he actually trained pilots. He had done plenty of flight simulation. The actual New York waterway people and all these tugboats, even a helicopter at the top of the screen, all these people drill all the time, right? That's how kind of like the real world outside InfoSec works. But how InfoSec works is we buy something, we put it on the network, we're good. No drilling, no training. The only time we respond to something if it's like a live event, right? So we have no way to do this. We have no way to actually handle these problems. There's three problems. We have problems where the personnel are not trained. They're not trained, or they don't know how to use their own equipment on their network. Also, we buy a lot of products, but what happens with those products is they're misconfigured, misplaced. Sometimes we buy the wrong products. You know, your CISO or something can go to RSA, come back, hey, we got to buy this new blinky thing. You buy it, and it doesn't work. Has anybody ever saw that? I saw it a lot. Everybody's scared, gunshot. Your CISO must be in the room. Everybody. And also, you have policies that don't work. In this case, like you might have 3 policies, but in reality, only one of them work. And so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to change that. I created this product called BThreat. What we do is we take threat intelligence and we virtualize it into a web browser scenario. So this is a sample of the data. We actually imitate these intrusions. We do all kind of different, all kind of magic through JavaScript and HTML5 and all kind of stuff. And we create these scenarios. And we save the data, and we give an opportunity for the incident response team to respond. We also give a dashboard so you can actually imitate how many data records lost, and it gives you a financial loss projection based on $200 per record loss. So it kind of helps people live fire, do live drills on their network and exercises. So this is the product I created. So how it works is you have a bunch of these cloud and crossbones in there, trademark. But you can still PII. You connect your browser to it. You know, those are the little bugs, and you can do PII, intellectual property, and credit card data or whatever. You can leak all this stuff out of your network. And what should happen is your IDS, IPS, DLP, firewalls, all those things should be screaming bloody murder on your network. So, in December, I'll be releasing a couple of products. Those products will be BThreat. BThreat will be available to the public, free sign up, and you'll be able to do these drills in network. And we're going to have BThreat Enterprise. BThreat Enterprise is a commercial level product, MAD reporting, MAD correlation, and all those things to help you actually train your team to actually respond to live incidents. And calibrate your network, fix your IDS. If you have 10 sensors and only 2 of them work, you should know that before a real breach. So that's the product. Anyway, that's kind of how a pitch sounds, right? So when you create a product, And you have to have a little bit of the business side on the thing. You would go into your financial projections, and like I said, to get salesperson, you want to be doing like $100K a deal. And also, if you think before you ever try to get somebody to sell your stuff, what you should do is you should actually try to sell it yourself, because it takes about 6 months for a salesperson to be effective. So you could pay somebody like $50K to $75K for half of your work, and they can't sell your product. So try to sell your product first. And that's what we call validation in the business world. So I think that I might have an hour. I have about almost 15 minutes. I kind of breezed over some things, but that's kind of how you want to do it. And from you want to make sure that you communicate like a business vision to people, and you can be good. You can be good to go. People may give you money. Or you can do a lifestyle thing and do all the sales yourself and don't take money. You just have to make that decision. But the key thing here is that there's a lot of companies that are repurposing our work in the security community, and they're making millions off of it. And I don't think that's cool. Or I hate it. It's ridiculous to me. Because, oh man, I just saw that at DEF CON, and now so-and-so got it in their product. Right? You know, that's how the industry works. So I'm an advocate of getting people to be able to do their own thing, and you know, hopefully one day, you know, maybe everybody can do that. But we gotta quit changing. But what we're doing now is mostly people, if they call themselves an information security professional, that means that I trade my time for money, and that's it. Why don't you create a product, productize yourself? Because as one of my good friends says, he says, Marcus doesn't scale. You don't scale. So if you can create products to outsource yourself almost, do it. That's it. Thank you for listening. If there's any questions, I'll be around till the end. You don't have to get up and leave or nothing. But any questions real quick? Go ahead.
How would you suggest handling, for example, implementing the project as open source yet still marketing it?
Okay, the question he asked was, how do you create a product that's open source but still maintain like your IP kind of thing, and how to market and stuff? All right, so what H.D. Moore, from the H.D. Moore Bible, you know, chapter 2, you know, whatever. H.D. Moore, he actually trademarked his project name, and I don't see that a lot. He trademarked it. He actually released it BSD, which is like free licensing, but he owned the rights to Metasploit. Nobody else could use that. And what I've seen people create products that are like my stuff, and they'll hashtag my name. It's ridiculous on Twitter. You know, they'll create something like HoneyDocs and hashtag HoneyDocs. I'm like, seriously, dude? But people, yeah. So what I would recommend is you can actually. Did you know you can copyright your code? And I think it's like $25 or something like that. Your code, you just send it to Library of Congress, and it's copyrighted, and it gives you protection too. People don't know that. You don't have to, like, a provisional patent even is $1,000, something like that. So you can do a provisional patent. You don't have to get a $10,000 patent. So there's ways you can protect your IP, and you can release it whatever license you like. Or you could do like Nmap. Nmap has a dual license, you know. So how Nmap does it, and how Fedor makes money, is he has a GNU license for everybody else, but if you install it in a commercial application, and there's a lot of companies that do, he charges a simple $25,000 license. So for all the security companies that implement Nmap on their devices, pay him $25,000. That's a nice lifestyle business right there. $25K every time. Go ahead.
Would your slide right there be an example of one open source, one commercial?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one free product, and what the book Rework is an awesome book. Read that book anyway. I don't care what, you got to read that book. Rework talks about in the term that he uses. He says drug dealers got it right. You give them a little bit of hit, and then that's what the book says. And that book was written by the writer of his name is DHH, David Hannemeyer Hansen. He actually created Ruby on Rails, and that dude is super smart. And he wrote that book Rework. everybody check that out, even if you don't want to start a business, because it kind of changes your mind on how things work. Another question?
Was that built on, like with offering it this way, if there are equal programs like the land map that you were saying, does it end up going on trust? That, if people are using it in a production environment, that they tell you and pay you?
There's actually a business software alliance thing that they will
Oh, I got you.
they will rip people to shreds, and they actually support companies doing that. You're not going to be able to keep people from ripping you off, especially if they're cleared around here. Like I said, government contracts are the worst. They'll take something and they'll take something free that somebody saw at Black Hat DEF CON, and they'll turn it into a product and sell it to the government for $500 million all day. I mean, it happens all the time. So, but yeah, try to get some kind of intellectual property, like I said, cheap ways. Like, I mean, I didn't know that you say, oh, here's my lines of code. I just want to submit it like it's a book, because it's words, and that totally gives you protection. So that's a little hacking the system type thing. Any other questions? Sweet. So I'm going to be up here. I have plenty of cards. Like I said, I like to connect personally with people. I call myself a compulsive mentor. I help people out all the time. I go to get people jobs, help them do their resumes. I mean, I'm that type of dude. So if you want to connect with me, come get one of my cards. And I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. And that's all, folks. Thanks.
And password cracking 101. Okay. I'm Pierre Kumenko, and this is a talk, Password Cracking 101. It's an introductory talk about password cracking. This is going beyond what they teach you in class about, oh, use John the Ripper, but not so advanced as to blow your mind in one shot. This is mainly enough to be dangerous and know where to look to learn more. If you're a seasoned penetration tester, you're probably not going to get much out of this. Okay, so obligatory warning. If you're a seasoned pro or if you know what you're doing, you're probably going to be bored. This is a beginner talk. Who am I? I'm a student at Wilmington University, and I got the top individual student score at the U.S. Cyber Challenge 2014 Delaware Cyber Camp Capture the Flag competition, primarily through password cracking. And how I got started in password cracking started off back in the day with the DC3 challenge, where they had plenty of password cracking actual challenges, and they had things like encrypted disk images and hash files and things like that. And unfortunately, the DC3 challenge is now defunct because Congress and, well, lots of password cracking challenges and just doing it on my own time. And it all went on from there. So why are we here? I heard you like password cracking.
Yeah.
And only know the bare bones basics, or know some but want to go beyond just use a basic word list. I also heard you like mudkips. Okay. And of course you want to learn how to crack passwords beyond what they tell you in class. Well, we're going to be using a couple tools. We're going to be using Hashcat. We're going to be using Hashcat, Pool. We're going to be using open source intelligence, and we're going to be using your brain. You must use your brain. I reject your reality and substitute my own. You must use your brain. Okay, so there are a couple tools of the trade for password cracking for standard hashes. You've got Hashkill, which was open source and a promising alternative to Hashcat, but unfortunately, even though it had decent cracking, it became unmaintained. You have John the Ripper, which is open source and maintained, but unfortunately is slow. And by slow, I mean very slow, which is the reason why we're going to be talking about Hashcat. Hashcat is a competition cracker. They're GPU and CPU based versions. However, unfortunately, it's closed source. We will only be talking about the GPU version. I should note that there is OCL Hashcat for AMD, which uses the OpenCL library, and there is the CUDA Hashcat for NVIDIA cards. CUDA Hashcat only works on NVIDIA cards. If you're going to build a password cracking rig, you probably want an AMD card, though, because AMD cards tend to be a lot more powerful. The problem is their driver support sucks. Okay, so you've also got rainbow tables. Unfortunately, rainbow table for about 9-character password combination in NTLM will take about a terabyte of space. So it'll be fast, but you're going to be using 9 terabytes to store 8-character passwords. And, well, you know, or rather a terabyte to store 9-character passwords. So, you know, if you got the space, that's one thing, but if not, you probably want to try something else. You've got different kinds of hardware. You've got CPUs, which are slow, but everyone has one. Definitely want to go with 64-bit CPU if possible. You've got GPUs, which are faster than CPUs, but not every system has them. However, they are more common because they tend to be used for gaming. Some algorithms, I should mention, are hardened against GPU attacks, such as scrypt and bcrypt. In event you're going up against scrypt and bcrypt, or for that matter, blowfish, you're better off just using a CPU. The reason why is because of floating point precision and actual length of the algorithms involved, which actually overload the GPU. You've also got FPGAs, which allow you to program the hardware itself, which are a lot faster than GPUs and CPUs, but are much less common, and they're fairly specialty hardware. Then you've got AISC, which is dedicated hardware to a specific algorithm. However, that hardware only supports that algorithm, and if the algorithm changes at all, the hardware is junk. So it's not likely you're going to have that unless you're, say, the NSA or Bitcoin miner. And before we talk about actually cracking hashes, we need to prepare. And there's the good old quote by Abraham Lincoln. If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. Very true, because you don't want to go into this unprepared. You're going to have to start with building your word list. So you use different word lists for different situations. You build based on cultural stuff, information about your target, and things like that. You're definitely going to want to use Google, because if you don't, you're going to be screwed. This is where Google dorking and, frankly, borderline doxing come. You want to have a good base word list. If you have a good base word list, it makes everything a lot easier, but if you have a bad one, you're screwed. So a good base word list is going to be based on stolen data. Rocku.txt is the best example out there currently. And Skull Security's website has Rocku and plenty of others, and that is where you want to start. Your starter word list, regardless of whatever it is going to suck, and you're not likely to get much from the initial word list. This is because of permutations and the fact that people, generally speaking, don't go picking their passwords out of word lists. So you're going to have to deal with variations and things of that nature. It will get better as you crack more passwords, though, and you need to add those cracked passwords to your word list. And when you do that, eventually you'll be able to crack even more passwords. Even though you could use targeted word lists, I would suggest not starting with that first, because usually the low-hanging fruit is the first thing you want to hit. If you hit the low-hanging fruit, people are going to inevitably choose the easiest way out to meet their standards, and usually the word lists with minor deviations, which I'll go into, are the way to hit those variations. So you've got various options for building word lists. You've got targeted OSINT, which is open source intelligence. You've got Cool, which is a tool which I will go into later, which spiders a website and builds a word list out of the words on the website. And I checked, and it does support Unicode. I checked this with Russian characters, so I know that's supported. You've got Twitter, You can look for related terms and tweets and use the API to your advantage. There are also a lot of dumps on Twitter. I should note there are tutorials for doing this online. I'll not go into it here because that's a bit more advanced. You've got social engineering, which frankly, why should I have to crack the password? Tell me what it is. You can convince someone to tell you their password. You don't need to waste the CPU cycles. And you got the password anyway. You've got themes. This is especially common in CTFs. At DEF CON this year, at the Crack Me If You Can contest, there was a series of 8 organizations, and if you could guess the theme of the passwords, you would get bonus points, and you would be able to determine the other passwords based on the themes. One of the password themes, well, it was gay porn stars. Yes. So apparently they decided to have a little fun with the contestants, and I fully agree with doing that to people. And you've got other things such as if you can figure out, say your target is a transportation company, there's a very high likelihood that their passwords might be transportation related. You can also look for compromised dumps, especially if the target you're trying to attack has already been compromised. Generally speaking, people are not going to change it any more than they have to, so you will likely find some variation of what is likely already there in the compromised dump if it's there. And you got to remember, work smarter, not harder. Because frankly, working harder is just going to waste time. Targeted open source intelligence. This is what's known about your target. You got things like what they do. Are they an artist? Are they a mechanic? Cultural things. What culture do they come from? Do they come from Brooklyn or do they come from India? Family, loved ones, people like to put passwords as their children's names or their pets' names. Hobbies, for example, if someone plays video games, it might be a video game character. Various other possibilities. And this can be explored deeper in other talks where it will be more appropriate. This is not an open source intelligence talk, and this is only a cursory overview. Cool is a pretty epic tool made by DigiNinja, also real name Robin Wood. It is a Ruby script which spiders a website and dumps all the words on the website to a text file as a word list. You can set things such as depth to spider, whether or not you want it to spider outside sites, things of that nature. So you could have it spider Wikipedia, and you could essentially try pulling 6 degrees of Hitler with cool, because we all know that most Wikipedia entries are only 6 degrees from Adolf Hitler. And it can be very useful for finding targeted words for targeted word lists based on the target's website. If someone is a car company, they are likely going to be talking about the cars they make on their website. And there is a very high likelihood that they are going to have a password based on the cars they make or things about cars. As an example of running cool, you want to run Ruby and then /cool.rb with D0. D0 means depth, 0 meaning only spider the current page specified. If you do D1, you specify that page and everything that page links to. D2 will go for everything those pages link to and so on down the line. The default is D2. And then you want to do -v to have verbose output to make sure it's actually going. And then -w, which writes to wordlist.txt or whatever you specify the wordlist name as. And then you have the URL of your target. So in this case, HTTP. In this case, you have the Wikipedia entry for a cat. It then dumps the words on the URL to a text file. So you've got the depth to crawl is D and such. Unfortunately, the lowest common denominator is very frequent when you're dealing with password word lists. Unfortunately, bad passwords tend to come from the stupid factory. In reality, people tend to think that they're being smart and cool by specifying, oh, well, I'm just going to use a capital at the beginning of my password and then, well, two digits and a special at the end. There are ways around that, and I'll get to that. This is where, in reality, people don't know any better because they aren't properly educated about this stuff, but that's for another talk. The lowest hanging fruit is likely to be your first stop. And as you get those first words, add them to your word list and continue on down the line. And this is where topologies come in. Topologies are, for example, uppercase, lowercase, 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 digit, special character. Unfortunately, people will do the absolute bare minimum to meet the password requirements, and while they have 2 digits and a special character in an uppercase, most people take the easy way out and say, oh, well, I'm going to set it so it's capital letter to start with and then 2 digits, usually the year, and then special character like an exclamation point. This is really easy to attack with things like hashcat. Patterns like this are predictable, and patterns like humans are, passwords like humans are predictable. This can be exploited. There are projects such as CoreLogic's Pathwell, which was being talked about at DEF CON and PasswordsCon this year, which can potentially nullify this problem by forcing everybody to use different topologies, but those are not available. Those are not available publicly yet, so we don't know whether or not they actually work as intended. But judging by the results from where they had one organization in the Crack Me If You Can contest, which was using passwords based on that, and out of over 1,500 passwords, a professional cracking team was only able to get 6, you have a fairly good indication that it's likely that it does work. So you've been warned that this might not apply for very long. Common topologies are usually capital, lowercase, and then numbers, and a special. Usually the numbers are a year, or might be something along those lines, maybe a birthday, or some sort of significant date for the person. They may also add the day, month, season. You get the idea. If you're making a password, don't do this. People also like to use leet speak in their passwords, such as switching an E for a 3. Again, don't do this. This is easy to attack, and I'll get to it in a minute. Unfortunately, most people seem to think they're this when they do that. They seem to think they're being some leet hacker. In reality, this is what's going to happen. So you can hit these with mask or rule attack. For Hashcat, there's a CoreLogic Crack Me If You Can 2010 contest rule set, which is practically essential. I strongly recommend anyone doing any password cracking download that, because it will save your bacon plenty of times. Combinator attacks, which string words together from dictionaries, also work wonders when dealing with, say, correct horse battery staple passwords. However, that's a more advanced topic and not going to be covered here. Ways to get hashes include things like dumps from Metasploit, including the registry and shadow, Mimikatz, which dumps plain text and doesn't even need to be cracked, and browser and application caches. For example, Firefox, which stores all of its saved passwords in clear text in an unencrypted database. Have fun with that. You have to manually set it to encryption, even though it's only desk encryption. And, well, have fun with that. We've also got RAM dumps and drive images. That's usually going to be from forensics. And you've got SQL dumps, documents, for example, PDFs, Word documents that might need to be cracked. And you've got the occasional pastebin dump and the compromising the link, such as, say, Target or Adobe or something like that. Those can be fun to crack just to, build your word list. But as a warning, do not go distributing the leaked data, because that is a CFAA violation, and you can get busted for that. So while from what I understand it's okay to download, it is not okay to distribute. However, I'm not a lawyer. I strongly suggest you talk to a lawyer who specializes in this before you do anything regarding that. You can do, and when it comes to Windows password recovery, you might get a text file or the registry keys. Someone might have dumped Mimikatz from a Metasploit shell, which is clear text password, so you don't even need to crack that. You might get a memory dump, etc. When dealing with registry keys, you need the system and the SAM file. There are some capture the flag competitions which will only give you the SAM file, which is, let's just say, wrong, because you cannot access the stuff in the SAM file without the system file. If you only have the SAM file, you might as well give up, because there's no way you're going to be able to easily figure out what is in the SAM file without the system file to decode it. And without both, you're screwed. These are found in Windows/System32/config. These can then be dumped with various tools from Metasploit, John the Ripper, various other specialty tools into a text file which you can then crack. You, generally speaking, do not want to crack a registry key because it might not take, depending on the program. Just dump it to text file, it's easier to handle anyway. Alright, so now let's actually get to cracking. Okay, so Hashcat is the fastest GPU cracker out there. It comes in two flavors. It comes in CUDA Hashcat for NVIDIA and OCL Hashcat for AMD. OCL uses OpenCL, CUDA uses CUDA, and unfortunately CUDA does not work on AMD cards, however OCL does work on NVIDIA cards. However, I have not tested running OCL Hashcat on an NVIDIA chipset. In these examples, I'm going to be using CUDA Hashcat since I have an NVIDIA card at home. And I should note there is a CPU version of Hashcat as well, but if you're going to do that, you might as well use John the Ripper because CPU cracking sucks. The lead developer of Hashcat is Adam, who unfortunately does not want to open source it. Long story short, there's a lot of politics behind it, and unfortunately, because it's not open source, people can't mess with it, add new things themselves. You get the idea. Unfortunately, because of that, people like me who like to tinker and add new things can't do that. For Windows, you've got various. Alright, so you've got the -M setting, which is the hash mode. You've got various numbers you can list. You can list all of them from the help command. And 1000 is NTLM. 2100 is MS Cache 2, which is your domain controllers. You've got 3000, which is LM, which is your old systems like Windows 95 and 98. But NTLM is what you're most likely going to hit. I have heard reports that newer Windows systems are also capable of SHA-256. However, I have not personally tested that. For Linux shadow files, some valuable M values are 500 for MD5 crypt, which is a $1 at the beginning of the line in the shadow file. Death script is 1500, which has no $sign in the beginning of it, and is legacy and is very easy to crack. Then you've got 1800, which is SHA-512 crypt, which is a $6 at the beginning of the shadow file. And you've got 7400, which is SHA-256 crypt, which is a $5. There are SHA-1 and Flowfish, however, I have not seen those as much. And unfortunately, Hashcat does not seem to have a setting specifically for SHA-1 Linux hashes. So I'm not sure whether or not it's actually supported. Another tool you want to look into is HashID from SciPanda, which is on GitHub. It's a Python script which will detect by regex the password type and give you a list of potential types for what you need to use, as well as which hashcat mode to attack with. There's the URL. The slide will be up on the slide will be up on Twitter later on, so you'll have access to it from there. Dictionary attacks you're going to want to start with, but don't expect much. Most of the time you're going to get just bare bones amounts, maybe 5 to 20% of the words from the hash dump. You're going to want to use, as an example, CUDA hashcat64.bin, which is the actual program running, with the -m 1800, which is SHA-512, and attack mode 0, which is brute force. Out file is example.pot, that's where it dumps the password hashes that have been cracked to. And then shadow, which is the file you're cracking from, and then path to dictionary files. The dictionary files can either be a single file or a folder containing the files. And that's a basic dictionary attack. Mask attacks are a bit more complex. You've got these which are useful when, say, for example, you know a known pattern. I have encountered this in Capture the Flags before, actually, where they have the regular expression for the flag being the same as the other flags in the CTF. So you might find a password which is in the form of a flag, and this is where it comes in handy. You've got values which can be used, which are $A, which is any upper, lower, special, or digit character. You've got $U, which is uppercase, $L, which is lowercase, $T, which is digit, $S, which is special, and you can also specify a known character such as the dash in the mask. So I'll show you an example of that in a minute. You can also specify character sets, however that's a little more advanced and I'm not going into that. The command for a mask attack would be similar to before. In this case, CUDA hashcat m1800 attack mode 3, and then out file example.pot shadow. However, instead of the dictionary, you have $U, capital ERP, dash, $L, ERP, dash, $D, $A, $S, which will eventually get herp 14 exclamation point. So essentially you've got, in the translation, you're going to be using the attack mode straight, which is attack mode 3, and then out file is output file, and you're going to use uppercase, and then the ERP dash is a known set of characters. So ERP dash is, say, I know a password starts with ABC dash. That would be where you put in ABC dash to rule out other possibilities in the attack. This will significantly cut down on cracking time if you know an existing prefix or an existing set of characters or patterns in the password. You've got the $L, which is lowercase, and then the ERP dash, and then $D, which is digit, $A, which is any character, and $S, which is symbol. Rule attacks are useful for going through permutations of a word list. Located in the rules directory of the hashcat folder usually. They toggle variations of the word list entries as attempts. There are a lot of these, like the best 64 rule. There are rules to toggle lead speed, append characters, prepend characters. So you can have it so it appends 4 digits in a special character or 2 digits in a special character to the end of every word in the word list, and it just runs through all the possibilities. This is what I mean by password topologies are easy to crack, because if you know, oh, well, it's going to be, one of these common topologies, you can just run through rules, which will run through the topologies and do variations of every topology possible. They toggle variations of word list entries as attempts, so it'll do one attempt which will have the $U as, say, a capital A, and then the next one will be a capital B, and so on down the line. The Core Logic Crack If You Can 2010 rule set is essential for this, and I strongly recommend downloading. There's also a John the Ripper version if you are so inclined. but I would strongly recommend just using Hashcat. As a example of a rule attack, you've got CUDA hashcat 64-bit, and then you've got SHA-512 hash, and then you've got -A0, which is a brute force attack, -R, which is the path to rule files. You can specify either a single file or a directory containing files. So you can set up a directory with all the rules you want to use in different files and just have it run through the whole directory. You've warned this will probably take a while though. And then you can use outfile, example.py, and then shadowing them path to dictionary files. So you need both the rule files and the dictionary files because the rules modify the words in the dictionary. With the right dictionaries and rules, this will eventually find the password. Sessions are useful for long cracks. They help prevent loss of session. Say, for example, you have a kernel panic or blue screen of death where your GPU overheats, or power outage, or you just need to do something else for a while. You can cancel the running session and just resume later. Starting a new session, you have the -- session equals example tag in the run command, and then resuming is -- session example, which is the session from before, and then -- restore, which restores the designated session. Now, would you like to know more? Well, there are useful resources. Conference videos, especially from Con and DEF CON and things of that nature, are very useful if you want to dig into this. I would strongly recommend videos from PasswordsCon and anything you can find from Rick Redmond of CoreLogic. He's a really cool dude, and he knows his stuff about password cracking. Google will really help you. There are a lot of tutorials out there scattered among the net. Last night I was thinking about, and I might try creating a central GitHub page with various tutorials on various parts of password cracking. That will go a lot more in depth than this. However, that's something that I thought about and haven't had time to act on yet. IRC will come in especially handy. In my case, it was the Hashcat channel in Freenode, and these guys helped me a lot in the planning and the preparation for this, and gave me a lot of useful feedback in what to cover, what not to cover, and words of advice for how to handle, covering various things. They've also helped me learn when I was clueless in input hashes in Hashcat. The man pages are also especially helpful. Seriously, read the fine manual. It will help you. There's a reason it's there. Questions, suggestions, comments?
Did you assist in the celebrity photo link?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I heard it was a hacker named 4chan. Anyone? Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on whether there's going to be a movement away from passwords, hardware tokens, other things, or is that just not going to happen?
It's going to be a combination. Two-factor authentication is starting to grow, but frankly, biometrics is going to be one thing that's going to come into play, but frankly, there are too many ways it could go wrong. Let's say you have a cold. That's going to mess with your heart rate, body temperature, all that stuff. So there are too many ways biometrics can go wrong. Let's say you cut your finger. Well, there goes your fingerprint. As far as hardware tokens, personally, I think it's going to move to stuff like Google Authenticator, which is basically the same thing on your phone. RSA tokens are probably going to go away in a while, especially after that little incident a couple of years ago where their source code got leaked and everything got messed up. Passwords are going to be here to stay until we can find something better, at least. There is a movement to find stuff that's going to be better than passwords, but until we know for sure, can't say one way or the other. Any more questions? Ed?
So as you were just mentioning with two-factor authentication, if that was implemented on, as a regular course, regular matter of course, would that undo password cracking?
You would need the tool, which is, you would need the person's phone or hardware token, so password cracking would not get you anywhere near as far. And you had a question?
So what's roughly the speed difference between hash and
John the Ripper, it depends on the implementation of the, because there are some which are really well done, some which are kind of crappily done. I've seen anywhere from 50% faster to 300% faster. It depends on the algorithm used and the implementation at the time. Yeah.
What's a single feature of a password that, a short list of features of a password that make it difficult, other than the ones that are commonly recommended?
I would strongly suggest a long string of random words, and by random I mean completely unrelated. Don't use quotes. Don't use like passages from a book. If you use quotes or passages from a book, these things are going to be in word lists. Your best bet is just random words, because it's going to get to the point where passwords need to be much, much longer, and you can remember a multi-word password easier than you can a random generated string of 20 random characters, including symbols, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers and all that stuff. Anyone else?
Interspersed with anything, or just
Your call, but I mean, like, the main thing is you need the length. The length is actually more important than the actual symbols. I mean, symbols will add more entropy, which is always good, but if you make a long enough string of words, it's easier to remember and stronger than a 20-character password with nothing but random jumps.
And even if you use commonly used, you use a short wood, dog, cat, then
I would suggest longer words personally. I really would. Try to have your password at least 40 characters if you're going to do that. You can do that with various words. Anyone else? I saw a hand back there. Anyone? Yeah.
How much would building a custom purpose-driven machine to crack passwords cost? And is it better now that things are moving towards like cloud? Do you know of any ways of building a password cracking machine in the cloud?
Amazon EC2. They have rentable machines in the cloud for about $2.40 an hour, which have 4 high-end NVIDIA GPUs in them. I've used those before in capture flag competitions, and they are much faster than just your built-on stuff. And as far as building your own one at home, AMD hardware is the way to go. It's generally cheaper and faster than NVIDIA hardware. Start off, you're going to want a Crossfire setup. You're going to want to start off with 1 or 2 graphics cards and go from there. Starting rig could be anywhere from $500 to $700, and then it can go anywhere up to $3,000 to $5,000 or even more, depending on what you put in it. Personally, though, if I'm going to do something that intensive, unless I'm being paid to do it and it's being paid big money to do it, I just use a standard gaming GPU and possibly Amazon EC2. There are also dedicated cloud cracking services. However, you really don't have control over whether or not, you don't really have control over what attacks they use. It's just, oh, give us the hash, and if we crack it, cool. If not, we have your money anyway. So, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Is there any support for a combined distributed approach with the GPU?
Yes, actually there is. One common trick when you start getting up to a professional level is to cluster the graphics card machines, so you can actually offload the work between various machines in a cluster setup. So you could have a server farm and offload the workload between the various servers using the command line and various tools. So yes, you actually can cluster the tools, and it doesn't have to be the same exact machine on each one. Anyone else? Yeah.
You said the was it NTL?
Yeah. And for a rainbow table, for all variations of 9 characters, about a terabyte. So, I mean, rainbow tables are really fast when you start loading in memory and searching. But the problem is they're so large on disk that unless you have a dedicated storage set up specifically for that, and you have enough money to really make the storage for that, it's kind of uneconomical. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, streaming is a go.
Pardon me?
Recording and streaming are a go.
Okay, thank you. So, emergent features of self-organizing systems, in other words, swarming for cyber applications. This is a talk that is going to be focusing not on specific techniques that we have available right now, but more of a vision into the future. I am Dr. Sven Bruckner. I have my PhD in computer science, artificial intelligence, and have been doing 15 years plus R&D and swarm intelligence theory and applications. Cyber is one of those that we're moving into. Our company, Axon Go Sentinel, part of the Mach 37 accelerator in the spring. Mach 37 being a sponsor here of this conference. We are looking to build cybersecurity products for mobile devices and the Internet of Things, and that is going to be part of my presentation today. If you want to take an early peek at what we are doing, our first Android app is out as a free public beta. Konica, look it up if you like. Part of Axon AI, which is looking at more than just cyber as applications for swarm intelligence for self-organizing systems. So I'm going to be talking a bit about what swarm intelligence research is looking at and how that can be applied to mobile applications and the Internet of Things. I'm going to sketch an approach that we are following right now. So as I said, self-organizing systems with emergent system-level features, in other words, swarming systems, are all around us. Nature has demonstrated in many, many, many applications on how to take very simple entities and combine them adaptively, robustly, scalably to create complex system-level behavior. You just got some photos there. We've got, of course, our classical ant systems and the bees swarming. We've got the fish schooling to create the appearance of a much larger animal to protect themselves from predators. We have swarming going on, self-organization going on, of course, at the bacterial level too. But then at the other hand, even humans in groups do it, crowd behavior, market behavior. Those are all examples of swarming systems, of self-organizing systems where at the aggregate, new behaviors, new patterns are emerging that are not encoded in the individual level behavior. So with all these examples around, the question is, why are we still programming our applications, our solutions in the traditional top-down centralized fashion? Why are we trying to spend an enormous amount of time on knowledge engineering, on explicitly enumerating all potential conditions our system has to face when we can create complex behavior by combining many lightweight individuals that are autonomously acting in a shared environment, that do not communicate directly with each other, but through the manipulation of the environment, the principle of the French biology was they called stigmergy, that can deal with noisy information and a heterogeneous, constantly changing population, and out of all that create a system at the system level where the functionality emerges robustly, adaptively, at a large scale, and has capabilities of learning also built in. So when we look at engineered systems, especially in the Internet of Things, we are seeing an architecture that is resembling all those natural systems that we're dealing with. So some of the statistics that are being thrown around, whether they are true or not, the projections are that by 2025 there will be more than 70 billion internet-connected devices. Those are simple devices that do their things, whatever they're doing, autonomously. And more than 1 trillion connected sensors. So if you're trying to build applications, whether it's for securing your Internet of Things, or whether it is to provide those various functions that you are hoping to get out of the Internet of Things, really you got to look at engineering those devices into an aggregate, into a coherent system by using self-organization emergent as design principles. I said I work on swarm intelligence. Really, swarm intelligence as a special case of artificial intelligence in the computer science world takes its inspiration from those natural agent systems. And then you have two paths within the community. You have from these observations and analyses of naturally occurring self-organizations, you have people who are focusing on building models of what happens in nature. How can we explain that natural systems create these functionalities? How do ants form their paths, or the termites create their air conditioning systems in their mounds, and so on and so forth? So models of the real world that are compared against the natural system observations. But then the second part is more from the engineering perspective. Okay, if you understand and have models on how nature creates self-organizing systems, can we derive the basic principles that design really takes? As I was showing on an earlier slide, things like keep your agents small, do not have direct interactions, and so on and so forth, the laundry list of design principles, and apply them as an engineering methodology to create new systems. So that's really where my work has been focused on, looking at swarming robotics, looking at planning and predicting complex behavior, looking at coordination of resources of various types, and then finally looking at cyber applications where you are tying together many different devices, be it a sensor network or be it a robot or a network of applications. So how would we want to do that if we have a collection of physical devices in an infrastructure where the individual devices are limited in their capabilities in terms of bandwidth, in terms of the computational power? A Nest thermostat does run Linux. It is a little computer, but overall it's not going to be the power of today's smartphones. It's going to be more simple. Where we have devices coming and going all the time, so where we have this high churn that we have to deal with. Well, we are taking the perspective that what we call a device in our infrastructure is really the combination of a physical unit with an autonomous agent, so a piece of software representing that unit to take any kind of control actions on that unit, or take information from that physical unit, so kind of our interface, plus provide that device with the ability to host other little software agents that could come and go through just a standard message passing protocol. If you have that kind of infrastructure, we can then use those agents to create a self-organizing peer-to-peer overlay and create virtual topologies where, rather than just sticking with the primary communication channels that are available from one device to another, say, route messages across the network of devices according to certain objectives. So I want to have devices of similar characteristics be tied close together in a peer-to-peer overlay. Well, you can achieve something like that in a self-organizing fashion, where devices basically search for other devices to connect to. So as an example, in that peer-to-peer overlay, we can then run other agents that are kind of spreading out information, that are taking local information and transforming it for the use of neighbors and neighbors of neighbors and so on. In that fashion, we can then create applications as emergent features of that process of these swarming agents, just like we see in these natural agent systems, like these insect colonies or other swarms that we find in nature. So one example of that, nope, those direction. One example of that is our first application that we are working on right now. Say for instance we have our mobile devices where we are taking local observations like, okay, what's the current CPU load of the device, or the memory consumption, or ratio of inbound outbound traffic, or other indicators of device behavior. Use the self-organizing peer-to-peer overlay as one method to create a topology where devices with similar characteristics find themselves connected to other devices that have same or similar characteristics, so that you can traverse that topology, and as you're discovering devices that are suddenly stand out like a sore thumb relative to all their neighbors, find those, identify those as suddenly changed, as potentially abnormal behavior, and start highlighting those. So you can do all that with local choices, with agents swarming in this topology that is created on the fly by the network of devices. And out of that, you can get situational awareness. You can know what type of devices are in your system right now, what are connected. You can know what the characteristics of those devices are, as well as detection of abnormal behavior, potentially threatening behavior, by looking at or deviations from the learned normal in your network. So that's the starting point for our development that we're doing at Axon Ghost Sentinel, and expanding from there, adding more capabilities, more features, always with these principles of engineering self-organizing systems in mind. All your choices are local, all your behaviors and rules are lightweight, so that you can scale up to a large number of devices in your network, as well as deal with very weak devices. And with that, the short introduction is over. So, any questions, comments?
Out of curiosity, are there efficiencies gained in terms of resources in the swarms versus a dedicated hierarchy?
The advantage of using swarming rather than self-organizing systems rather than explicitly coded hierarchies is for one, to deal with the dynamic situation where creating a hierarchy, if you try to do a top-down, creates scaling challenges as well as just reactive challenges. Also, the advantage of doing the swarming in the network and doing basically all your calculation, all your operations in the network is that it's pushing computation to the edge, and thereby you're saving the bandwidth of not having to pump out all status information into the cloud or whatever you, and do analytics there. So that's really the purpose of the swarming architecture: push the calculation, the operations into the cloud, into the network, to the edge.
I do networking, so I mean that's my primary job. So that's why I'm curious. This has an assumption of a network in place, so it's less for self-organizing a network at this stage.
You mean self-organizing the physical connections?
Correct.
Right. I
And
mean,
the linkages between the nodes.
You can create that out of the swarming too. I mean, you can start with one set of linkages and then have the swarming operating over that set, basically identify, okay, which linkages should be adjusted and recreated so that you get more optimal traffic. Or
yeah, and that's where I was curious about what the over, like, I know that I've got packet overhead, protocol overheads. I'm wondering for a swarm-based protocol what the overhead would be. It's theory. I mean, we don't have a working, a widely adopted model, to be a better way to say that. So that's where I am most interested in seeing where this type of research goes, above and beyond, what we can do with robotics models or something.
Do you have any suggested open source libraries or reading regarding swarming in the event we wanted to implement something of our own using it?
Well, there are some packages out there, most predominantly used or widely used is Repast, which is the successor to Swarm, which is an architecture that originally came out of Santa Fe. I believe Repast is maintained by University of Chicago. Java-based framework with lots of example models. If you just Google swarm intelligence as keywords, self-organization, emergence, you'll find plenty of reading. There's a long-standing series of conferences called SASO, Self-Adaptive Self-Organizing Systems, that happens each year, alternating between Europe and the United States. That has good publications, entry level. If you are interested, they typically have tutorial sessions in the first days. That's always a good place to start. Any other question?
Does this not lend itself to like biological calculations, like Mendel's law and things like that as well? Individual biologics.
Well, it's not like it's not like genetic computing or anything like that. No, it's really software engineering, but bottom up rather than top down. So it's a different methodology for software engineering. So at least that's the way I see it. Even when you have in robotic platforms, it's still the software that controls the robots and how to coordinate and all that. Yep.
What's the kind of scale that you're looking at? Like, you mentioned that there's a beta of a smartphone app. Is that going along the lines of where like my smartphone would be one of the nodes in the swarm, and then everyone else's?
That is the vision. I mean, the current version of that is that the swarm is actually not physically running on your app. In your app connects to the server where the swarm lives. So right now the agents are still sitting in a central server doing their swarming thing in that box. But our next versions that we're working on is going to more and more push the boundaries where at the end of the day that the real vision is that there is not going to be a central server anymore. There is your device and my device and everybody else's device talking to each other, supporting that swarming architecture so that we are creating intelligence in the network amongst us. Yeah, right back there.
What are the vulnerabilities you think that this might introduce that would not apply to the traditional approach? Because when I think of swarms, I think of lens going off.
Traditional software is brittle to even subtle changes. If you hack into the software, if you find a way in, just like you talked before, if you know the hacking tricks to get into the software, you can control the whole thing because the control is in the software. If you hack your way in, you have control. Self-organizing systems, the individual piece of software, even if you hack your way into the code, is not going to give you control of the system. If you try to get ants out of your kitchen, they have invaded your kitchen, they've built their paths, killing the individual ant is not going to do anything good. You will have to basically wipe out most of the population and preferably also the chemical markers, the pheromones that they laid down so that they're guiding in new ants out from the colony. So from a vulnerability perspective, self-organizing systems are or can be more secure because the software itself is not going to tell you what the system is doing. That's a self-organizing emergent feature of all the interactions. Taking control of an individual agent, like, okay, I'm going to install the app and then I'm going to hack it and I'm going to send different signals. That's just one among thousands and thousands of participants in the swarm. That's not going to be changing the lemmings, changing the overall behavior. But if you understand, if you're basically knowledgeable enough that you understand what the system level behavior is, you can start faking it out, sending enough fake signals to affect many of the participants. At some point, you will be able to take control and send all the lemmings off the cliff. But it takes a lot of effort to do that. Any other questions? Mona, thank you for your attention.
Okay, and all right, cool. Smaller crowd, let's keep it interactive. Any questions, feel free to ask me, jump in anytime. Let's keep it short. I don't want to be standing between a beer and all that good stuff. So again, my name is Karthik Bhatt. I'm the founder and CEO of SecureDB. And SecureDB is part of the Mark 37 Accelerator Fall 2014 program. If you guys don't know what it is, I'd be more than happy to tell you about it. It's the first cybersecurity accelerator anywhere in the world, based in Northern Virginia. There are totally 7 companies going through the program, all security companies. I think Marcus was here talking about, his company is also part of the program. So again, it's not going to be a company pitch. I just want to talk about identities and encrypted identities and that kind of stuff. So over the last couple of years, with all the breaches happening, right? People's PII compromised, PHI compromised, and all of that stuff, and it got me thinking, right? Isn't any of this data encrypted, right? Guesses, because there are only 4 people here. What percent of data that got breached do you think was encrypted? Guess.
What percentage?
What percentage?
70,
60? 60% was encrypted.
Oh, was encrypted. Okay. Probably 10.
10. Any other guesses? 42. 42?
There's a reason I say 42.
Oh yeah, I know. Right. Answer is always 42, right?
Yes.
4.
Well, I had an extra digit.
You did, right? 4%.
Would identity in an Active Directory be considered at rest?
Yeah. So of all the data that was breached over the last, this year, it's 2014, right? Only 4% is encrypted. And everything else is all clear text. That means if the attacker is already in your perimeter, the work factor to get to that data is 0. So it got me thinking, so we as consumers, we need to have some rights, right? What is even airlines will have rights. So for consumers, what would that be? Right? The websites and services that we give our data to, and most of these services, we pay to consume these services. We pay to buy stuff, right? Would it be nice if they encrypt our personal data? And at least tell us if it's not, right? So that I can make an informed decision. And this is anonymous we monetize. Before you take all my personal data, throw it and do your math, at least anonymize that. Federal government has been doing anonymization on all their data before they put out. It's been going on for years, right? It's not like some of these techniques are new. These techniques are well known and are available. And when the breach does happen, tell us what went wrong, right? So that we learn from that and get prepared, be prepared next time. I know there are companies have to wrestle with, but that's anyway. So as a startup, we do a lot of surveys, and there is
almost an overwhelming consensus that the identity data is the most important data. Healthcare organizations, banks, online portals, it's always the identity data, right? Identity data out of transactional data, that data is almost meaningless and it's of no use to anybody, right? So there is, and when we talk, ask people, right? Why is it that you guys don't encrypt this data, right? I always get a blank stare. Was I supposed to encrypt this data, right? I get that more times than I could count. And the second question, and this hasn't come up recently, is performance. So it's going to impact my performance. My site's going to be slow. My mobile app is going to be slow, right? Since all these big breaches, I'm getting less and less of this, right? What cryptographers couldn't do for the last 20, 25 years, these breaches have, right? This is no longer a concern. People understand the need for encryption. You know, these breaches have sold the importance of encryption. I don't get this that much anymore. This one is legit. Key management is hard, is expensive, is time consuming. It's difficult to get it right. And with all lean startup methodologies and get stuff, you know, put the software out there, and this attitude is prevalent. I'm a big fan of, you know, lean startup and getting this stuff out there faster and hacking the code and getting it to work faster, but there always needs to be an iteration to do the security, right? At some point before you go live, because after you go live, it's always too late. Now, let's talk about a few different technologies, right? First one is disk encryption. We've been using it for years on our laptops. When you translate that to server environments or databases, there are a couple of issues. Number one, if you are using it on a database server, the backups are not encrypted, right? The log files are not encrypted. So, so there is extra care that you need to do to make sure your backups and all of that is encrypted. This one is interesting. This is what a lot of developers use most frequently, because most of the programming languages have some sort of libraries to do encryption, or even most of the databases themselves have an SQL commands or libraries. And transparent data encryption is more of an enterprise data, right? Oracle, SQL Server, most of these enterprise databases have support for that. Everybody knows what that is? So basically what that is when databases usually have a component called storage manager. So the storage managers, so when it writes to the file, whatever data is in the memory, that data gets written encrypted. So the page files are encrypted. And when the data is read back, that data gets decrypted. So the person who is issuing an SQL command doesn't see that at all. It's completely transparent, and hence it's called data encryption. So let's do a little bit of deep dive on field level encryption, right? Now, let me just give a little bit of background of what we do. We build APIs to make it very easy for developers to encrypt data. That's what SecurityB does. That's what our company does. We're going to launch our product in early next year. But we specialize in encrypting identity data. So it turns out that this kind of data is really, really a good use case for encryption, right? It's usually read-only data. Your username, your password, you know, your social security number doesn't change. Your address hardly changes. Your first name almost never changes. Last name sometimes may change. So it's pretty much read-only data. What does that buy us? That means it's easy to cache. Whatever performance hit you take from, say, encryption and decryption, you could offset by caching it. And fields are reward card. This is beautiful, right? There is never a use case for multiplying your first name with social security number. That use case does not exist. So it's a simple case of encrypt, store, get it back, and decrypt. You never have to do any math on the identity most of the times. And the queries are almost always known. So if you are building a user management module, right, a login page, a registration page, change password page, forgot password page, in all these cases, you know exactly what queries you're going to issue against the database, right? Which means that you can plan exactly what kind of performance tuning that you need to do. There are only 10 or 15 queries that you would ever need when you're building a user management module. So identity data is actually tailor-made for encryption, though we see such a small adoption of it. Now, when small and medium businesses are going to the cloud, when you go to the cloud, it brings its own challenges. Cloud, at least public cloud, is untrusted environment, right? The enterprises treat it as an untrusted environment because it's not the environment they built. It's not in their control. So computing over encrypted data in the cloud has challenges, right? So what are the options? Either I give the data to the cloud provider, encrypted data, and to run any queries, I need to give the keys as well. Not a good idea, right? What are the other options? If I want to hold on to the keys, I need to download all the data, decrypt it using the keys that I own within the enterprise, run queries, and re-upload the data. Again, that's not practical. So what is the solution then? So the solution is to do the encryption within the perimeter, within the trusted network, but run queries in the untrusted environment, which is in the database. And this is the kind of space SecurityB is in, right? Again, about us, we are a startup specializing in solving these kind of problems. How do you encrypt data in the cloud? How do you decrypt it? What are the different payloads that you can support? And especially when it comes to identities, how do you solve that problem? And that's the kind of challenge that we are trying to solve. Again, we're going to be, again, if you want to hack us, you can send us an email, us on SecurityB. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
Is it clear what is identity data? Is that defined by the government?
Every agency, even within government, treat differently. So for us, for our company, we usually treat anything which is in an LDAP as identity data. But even within the standards, like for example, between HIPAA and PCI, there is some disagreement over what is actually, personally identifiable information. So we apply it slightly more liberally. We let developer decide what identity data he wants to protect or she wants to protect.
And the process of anonymity is basically assigning you an arbitrary number and then connecting that number back to
an encrypted row in the database.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And that's pretty widely used. Inside many companies.
Yeah, I would say so. Especially in case of where data is encrypted, you don't want to decrypt every now and then. You want to get some information about the data that you don't need to decrypt yet. So we support that use case as well. We allow our customers to get a unique UUID about the user and use that for all the future purposes. And even if that is compromised, it's completely harmless.
So they're just using user 3 tag H or whatever, not name.
Yeah.
Just a user.
Yeah. So that becomes the identifier. So about SecurityB. So the problem and the challenge that we are trying to solve today, it is very hard to implement strong encryption, especially if you are enterprise. Encryption has always been an enterprise story. It's not very easy to do for a developer who's building a mobile app or a web app evening project. So we are taking these very enterprisey use cases and we are pushing it to the developer market by making it very easy to do it. I mean, we handle the key management, we handle secure backups, offline backups, all these very enterprisey use cases we bring to the developer market. So if you are a mobile developer or web developer, we expose APIs to build your registration screens, change password screen, forgot password screens, such that all the data in the backend is fully encrypted. Yep, go ahead.
What protection is there against situations like national security letters?
So in case of our so we have different topology, right? And in case of our hybrid topology, we wouldn't be getting those letters because we don't have those keys. Our customer, whoever is our customer, they have the keys. Think of it like a spider oak situation, right?
Okay.
The laptop or the desktop of the individual has the keys. We don't. Anything else? Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Did you say you're in Northern Virginia?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I live there. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
In what sense?